You know, there is a certain weight to the number 55 that most people try to ignore until it is too late to do anything about it. It is not just another milestone or a reason for a cake. It is the sound of the clock ticking in a quiet room after the guests have gone home and the lights have dimmed. Most people spend their first 50 years living as if they have an infinite supply of tomorrows, scattering their days like handfuls of sand into the wind, thinking the desert will never run out. But at 55, the horizon begins to shift. The illusions of youth start to peel away like old paint on an Idaho barn, and you are left standing face to face with a very sober reality. You have spent decades building a life, but the question I want to ask you tonight is a bit more unsettling than that. Have you been building a cathedral that will stand for generations, or have you just been stacking bricks to keep the cold wind out for one more season? I am not here to offer you a pat on the back or to tell you that everything is fine just as it is. I am here because we need to have a very honest conversation about the remainder of your journey and the gravity of the time you have left. Your next 10 years will either be your greatest masterpiece or your most profound regret, and the choice is no longer something you can push off until next year. If you were to look into the mirror right now and strip away the titles, the bank account, and the excuses, would you actually recognize the person looking back at you? Most people, when they reach the age of 55, begin to look for the nearest exit ramp. They start thinking about how to slow down, how to protect what they have, and how to quietly drift into the sunset of their years. They let the momentum of the world take over, hoping that the habits they formed 30 years ago will somehow carry them through the final chapters of their lives. But I want to suggest to you that this is the most dangerous period of your entire existence. The majority of people spend their lives living by reaction rather than by design. They are like a leaf in the wind, blown about by the economy, the opinions of their neighbors, and the shifting tides of the culture. They spend 20 years at a job they don't particularly like, buying things they don't particularly need, to impress people they don't particularly care for, and by 55, they are tired. They are philosophically exhausted because they have spent all their energy trying to survive rather than trying to build something that lasts. There is a profound difference between the person who is drifting and the person who is designing. Think of yourself as an architect. When I was working as a stock clerk at Sears, making pennies and wondering why my life wasn't working, I didn't realize that I was building my life without a blueprint. I was just stacking bricks day after day without any vision of what the final structure was supposed to look like. Most people are still doing that at 55. They have a pile of bricks, some mortar, and a few tools, but no grand design. The successful few, however, understand that at this stage of the game, you are no longer just a laborer. You are the master architect. You have 35 years of professional experience, 40 years of personal failures, and a lifetime of observations. You have the raw materials of wisdom that a 20-year-old couldn't even imagine. The tragedy is that most 55-year-olds stop being architects and start being spectators. They watch the world change and complain about how it used to be, while the designer looks at the world and asks how they can use their accumulated wisdom to shape the future. We must understand the law of the seasons. You are currently in the late summer or early autumn of your life. In Idaho, when the harvest comes, the farmer doesn't sit on the porch and celebrate the fact that he survived the spring. He works harder than ever because the harvest is the culmination of everything he has done for the past 6 months. At 55, you are in your harvest season. The seeds you planted in your 20s and 30s, the disciplines, the relationships, the investments, are now bearing fruit. If the harvest is thin, you cannot blame the soil. You cannot blame the rain. You must look at the seeds you chose to sow. But here's the beautiful thing about being a human being. Unlike the tree that is stuck in the soil, you can change your philosophy today. You can decide that the next 20 years will not be a slow decline into irrelevance, but a deliberate climb toward your highest potential. You can choose to redesign your life right now, using the wisdom you've gained from every mistake you've ever made. The architecture of a life is not built on big, dramatic movements. It is built on the refinement of your daily disciplines. It is about the books you choose to read now that you have the maturity to understand them. It is about the people you choose to surround yourself with now that you know who truly adds value to your life. Most people are looking for a miracle to save them in their later years, but the miracle is already within you. It is your ability to think, to reason, and to decide that you will no longer settle for a life that is less than what you are capable of living. The contrast between the majority who drift and the few who design is simply a matter of personal philosophy. One group believes that life happens to them, while the other knows that life is something you create. At 55, you have the unique opportunity to look back at the first half of your life and use it as a textbook. You can see exactly where you went wrong, where you let your disciplines slide, and where you allowed the minors to take up too much of your time. You can take those lessons and craft a second half that is so powerful, so intentional, and so filled with purpose that it makes the first half look like a mere rehearsal. Design is a conscious act. It requires you to sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and decide exactly what you want your legacy to be. It requires you to audit your health, your finances, and your spirit with a cold, objective eye. You see, the person who designs their life at 55 is not afraid of the future because they are the ones creating it. They are not worried about the shaker days or the losses of the past because they know that those experiences were just the training ground for the greatness that is to come. But this kind of clarity doesn't come to those who are busy watching television or gossiping about the news. It comes to those who are willing to do the hard mental work of evaluation. It comes to those who realize that time is now their most precious commodity, far more valuable than the gold they spent their youth chasing. If you had the power to completely rewrite the ending of your story, starting this very moment, what is the first chapter you would change? I remember sitting across from Mr. Earl Shoaff during one of those early evenings that changed the entire trajectory of my life. At the time, I was struggling to find my footing, trying to make sense of why some people seemed to have the world in the palm of their hands while I was barely keeping my head above water. I had spent years working hard, or at least what I thought was hard, behind the counters and in the warehouses, but my results didn't match my effort. I was doing what most people do. I was blaming the wind. I was blaming the company, the pay scale, and the circumstances of my birth on a small farm in Idaho. Mr. Shoaff looked at me with those kind, discerning eyes and said something that felt like a bucket of cold water to my soul. He said, "Jim, the problem is not your circumstances. The problem is your philosophy. You are trying to change the world outside of you, but you haven't yet done the work on the man inside of you." He told me that most people spend their lives trying to gather the fruit without ever tending to the roots. They want the harvest of a well-lived life, but they are unwilling to become the kind of person who deserves that harvest. That conversation stayed with me through my shaker days, those years when I was out there selling supplements, knocking on doors, and facing the brutal reality of the marketplace. I learned very quickly that the marketplace doesn't care about your needs, it only cares about your value. I spent many nights feeling the sting of rejection and the weight of my own inadequacies. I felt the shame of knowing I had potential that was being wasted because I was too undisciplined to harness it. I realized that I had been playing a small game, and the reason I was failing wasn't because the world was unfair, but because I was unprepared. I recall a specific moment during those years when I had lost a significant amount of what I had worked for. It wasn't just about the money, it was the loss of confidence. I felt like I had let down my family, and more importantly, I had let down the vision of the man I wanted to be. I remember walking through the rows of an old orchard, the sun setting behind the trees, feeling the weight of my failures. I realized then that every mistake I had made was a lesson I hadn't paid enough attention to. I had been so busy trying to get that I had forgotten to become. Mr. Shoaff had once told me that the greatest value in life is not what you get, but what you become in the process. He said that if you earned $1 million, the most important thing wasn't the money, but the person you had to become to earn it. At 55, this truth takes on a whole new meaning. You see, the person you have become over the last few decades is now your greatest asset or your heaviest burden. If you have spent your time developing your character, your skills, and your spirit, you are standing on a foundation of granite. If you have spent your time making excuses, you are standing on shifting sand. I spent years refining that philosophy, moving from the warehouse floors to the speaking stages of the world. But I never forgot the feeling of being lost. I never forgot the shame of realized potential that was left untouched. That shame is a powerful teacher if you are willing to listen to it. It tells you that you were meant for more. It tells you that the shaker days were necessary to prune away the ego and leave behind the substance. Every disappointment I faced was actually a gift, a refinement process that prepared me for the responsibilities I would later hold. Now, as I look at the journey you are on, I want you to understand that your past, no matter how many mistakes it contains, is simply the raw material for your future. You cannot change the beginning of your story, but you can absolutely change the ending. I had to learn that the hard way through years of trial and error and the patient guidance of a mentor who saw more in me than I saw in myself. You must be willing to look at your own history with that same level of honesty and grace. The lessons I learned under the Idaho sky and in the quiet moments after a long day of sales are the same lessons that apply to you right now. You have to take responsibility for the man in the mirror. You have to stop looking for someone to save you and start becoming the person who can lead the way for others. This is the stage of your life where your story moves from being about your own survival to being about your contribution. It is a shift from me to we, and it is the most fulfilling transition a human being can make. I want you to think about the weight of your own experiences. Think about the times you fell and the times you chose to get back up. Those moments are your true wealth. They are more valuable than any currency, but they only have value if you use them to build something meaningful. If you just carry them around as regrets, they will only slow you down. If you use them as stepping stones, they will take you to heights you never thought possible. As we move forward into the deeper parts of this philosophy, I want you to prepare your mind. I'll leave a few moments of quiet at the end of this video for you to really sit with these ideas. It is in the silence that the truth usually finds its way to the surface. Most people are too afraid of the quiet because they are afraid of what they might hear their own conscience saying. But you are not most people. You are here because you are ready to hear the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. What is the one story you keep telling yourself about why you aren't where you want to be? And is that story actually true, or is it just a comfortable lie you've grown fond of? To understand the weight of your current position, we have to look at the immutable laws that govern this universe. One of the most vital lessons Mr. Shoaff ever taught me was the law of the sail. He told me, "Jim, the same wind blows on us all. The wind of economic change, the wind of political shifts, the wind of social upheaval, and the wind of personal tragedy. These winds are impartial. They don't check your bank account or your birth certificate before they strike. The difference between where you are and where you want to be has nothing to do with the wind. It has everything to do with the set of your sail. By the time you reach your 50s, you should be a master sailor. You should have learned by now how to trim your sails to catch the slightest breeze of opportunity and how to tighten them when the storms of life begin to howl. The tragedy of the average person is that they spent 40 years cursing the wind. They spent their energy complaining about the direction of the gust instead of walking over to the mast and making the necessary adjustments. At 55, you cannot afford to be a victim of the weather. You must realize that your philosophy is your sail. If your philosophy is weak, if it is riddled with holes of doubt and neglect, then no matter how hard the wind of opportunity blows, you will only drift. But if you have spent these years refining your thinking, if you have patched the holes in your character with discipline and truth, then even a small breeze can carry you toward a magnificent destination. We must also talk about the law of the seasons. Life is not a constant summer, and it is certainly not a permanent winter. It is a cycle. In my early years, when I was struggling just to put food on the table, I didn't understand that I was in my springtime. Spring is the time for planting. It is a time for frantic, focused activity. If you don't plant in the spring, you will be begging in the autumn. Most people get to their mid-50s and realize they didn't plant enough. They spent their springtime playing, and now that the harvest is due, their fields are full of weeds and stones. If that is where you find yourself, you have to be honest enough to admit it. You cannot wish the harvest was better. You can only work to make the next one different. The season you are in right now is what I call the season of transition. You are moving from the high heat of summer into the cooling reality of autumn. In autumn, we see things for what they truly are. The leaves fall and the structure of the tree is revealed. At 55, the structure of your life is revealed. You can no longer hide behind the energy of youth. Your health, your finances, and your relationships are standing there in the cold light of day, showing exactly how much care you have given them over the last 30 years. This is not a time for despair, but it is a time for a very sober audit. You must become a student of your own results. The law of sowing and reaping is absolute. It is not the law of wishing and reaping. It is not the law of needing and reaping. The soil doesn't care that you need a harvest. The soil only cares that you planted the seed. If you planted the seeds of neglect, you are now reaping the harvest of a quiet desperation. If you planted the seeds of discipline, you are reaping the harvest of peace and abundance. But here is the secret that most people miss. You can still plant. Even in the late afternoon of your life, you can find a patch of ground and plant a new seed. It may not grow into a giant oak by tomorrow, but it will grow. You can start a new discipline today that will change the next 10 years of your life more than the last 30 years ever did. One of the greatest mistakes people make at this age is what I call majoring in minors. They spend their time on things that simply do not matter. They worry about the neighbors, they get upset about the trivialities of the day, and they lose sight of the grand design. You have to learn to let go of the small things so you can lay hold of the big things. You have to decide that your time is too valuable to be spent on anything that doesn't contribute to your ultimate purpose. Mr. Shoaff used to say that some people are so busy earning a living that they don't have time to design a life. Are you still just earning a living, or have you finally started to design a life that is worthy of your potential? The elaboration of this philosophy leads us to a single word: responsibility. You must take total, radical responsibility for the state of your harvest. If you are 55 and you aren't where you want to be, it isn't the government's fault, it isn't your boss's fault, and it isn't your upbringing's fault. It is your fault. And that is the best news I can give you. Because if it is your fault, then you are the one who has the power to change it. If the problem was outside of you, you would be a prisoner. But since the problem is inside of you, in your philosophy, in your disciplines, in your set of the sail, then the solution is also inside of you. Think about the seasons you have left. If you have 20 or 30 summers left, how do you want to spend them? Do you want to spend them explaining why you failed, or do you want to spend them showing what is possible when a human being finally wakes up to their own power? The marketplace is waiting to see if you have anything left to give. It is looking for the wisdom that only comes with age, the stability that only comes from having survived the storms, and the vision that only comes from having seen the horizon many times before. Don't let the world tell you that you are past your prime. Your prime is whenever you decide it is. Your prime is the moment you stop making excuses and start making progress. The struggle you feel right now is actually the birth pains of a new version of yourself. It is the friction between the person you have been and the person you are capable of becoming. Most people retreat from that friction. They look for comfort. They look for a way to numb the pain of their own mediocrity. But I want you to lean into it. I want you to use that discomfort as fuel. Let it remind you that you are still alive, that you still have a heartbeat, and that you still have work to do. The field is still there, the seeds are in your hand, and the sun is still in the sky. What are you going to do with the time that remains? When you look at the balance sheet of your life today, are you more concerned with the number of years you have left or the quality of the person who will be living them? Now we come to the part of our conversation that most people would rather avoid. We have to talk about the inventory. In business, we take inventory to see what we have, what is missing, and what has gone sour on the shelves. But how often do you take a mental and spiritual inventory of your own life? At 55, you can no longer afford the luxury of self-delusion. You don't have another 40 years to wander in the wilderness of maybe and someday. The challenge I want to set before you today is a cold, hard audit of your results. Not your intentions, not your potential, and certainly not your excuses, but your results. If we were to look at your bank account, your physical health, and the depth of your closest relationships right now, what story would they tell? Would they tell a story of a man or woman who has mastered their disciplines? Or would they tell a story of someone who has spent decades drifting and hoping for a lucky break? I want you to look into the mirror of your own conscience and ask yourself some very uncomfortable questions. Why are you still struggling with the same problems you had 10 years ago? Why are you still making the same excuses about your weight, your finances, or your lack of peace? We often say that experience is the best teacher, but I have found that only evaluated experience is of any value. Otherwise, you aren't living 55 years, you are just living 1 year 55 times over. It is time to stop the cycle of mediocrity. It is time to be offended by your own lack of progress. There is a certain kind of healthy anger that comes when you finally realize you have been settling for crumbs when you were meant to sit at the banquet table of life. If you are not where you want to be, you must be honest enough to admit that you are the one who put yourself there. Let's talk about your library. What have you read in the last 90 days that has challenged your thinking or expanded your soul? Most people at 55 have stopped learning. They think they know it all, or worse, they think it's too late to learn anything new. But the moment you stop being a student, you start dying. Your mind is like a garden. If you don't pull the weeds of old toxic thoughts and plant the seeds of new vibrant ideas, the garden will go to ruin. I challenge you to pick up the books you've been avoiding. I challenge you to listen to the mentors who make you feel a bit small, because that smallness is where growth begins. If your library is dusty, your future will be dull. And what about your associations? Take a look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Are they pushing you toward greatness, or are they pulling you back into the safety of the average? At 55, you don't have time to waste on casual friendships that offer nothing but gossip and complaints. You need people around you who have a higher standard for themselves than you have for yourself. You need people who will look you in the eye and tell you that you are playing too small. If you are the smartest, most successful person in your circle is too small. I challenge you to find a new circle, even if it means being the beginner again. There is no shame in being the beginner at 55. There is only shame in being the expert at being average. We also have to address the weight of your health. You cannot fulfill a grand vision in a broken body. You have spent years neglecting the very vessel that carries your soul through this world. I know the shaker days were exhausting, and I know the middle years were filled with stress, but your body is the only place you have to live. If you don't take care of it now, you will spend the rest of your years paying for that neglect with pain and limitation. I challenge you to treat your body with the respect it deserves. Discipline your appetite, discipline your movement, and stop treating your health as an afterthought. You want to be there to see the harvest, don't you? You want to be strong enough to enjoy the fruits of your labor. This is the mental audit that separates the winners from the whiners. It takes courage to look at your life and say, I have failed in this area, and it is my fault. But that admission is the only doorway to change. Most people are too proud or too scared to walk through it. They would rather live in a comfortable lie than face a painful truth. But you are here because you know there is more. You feel that nagging sense that the best version of you is still waiting to be unleashed. That version of you isn't going to show up by accident. It is going to show up because you demanded it. You have to demand more of yourself than anyone else could ever expect of you. I want you to think about the legacy you are building right now. If your life ended today, what would be the primary lesson your children and grandchildren would learn from your example? Would they learn how to make excuses, or would they learn how to overcome? Would they learn how to settle, or would they learn how to strive? Your life is a message to the world. Is it a message of hope, or is it a message of warning? This is the weight of 55. You are no longer just living for yourself. You are living as a blueprint for those who follow. Don't give them a blueprint for a shack when you could have given them a blueprint for a palace. As we move toward the conclusion of this talk, I want to remind you that the most important work happens in the quiet. Don't rush to the next video when this one is over. Don't go back to the noise of the world just yet. I'm going to leave you some time at the end for reflection. You need to sit with the questions I am asking you. You need to let the truth sink in until it becomes uncomfortable enough to force a change. The world is full of people who are busy being busy, but very few people are busy being effective. The difference is found in the moments of silence where you finally stop running and start listening to your own soul. What is the one thing you have been avoiding for years that, if you finally faced it today, would change everything for the better? The time for contemplation is rapidly drawing to a close, and the time for a radical, life-altering decision is upon us. I want you to feel the fire that is still burning deep within your soul, even if it has been reduced to a flickering ember by years of neglect or the damp winds of disappointment. At 55, you are not a fading shadow of your former self. You are a concentrated force of nature, forged in the fires of experience and tempered by the lessons of 1,000 battles. The world might try to tell you that your best days are behind you, that you should start looking for a comfortable chair and a quiet corner to wait out the rest of your years, but I am here to tell you that is a lie from the pit of mediocrity. Your prime is not a date on a calendar, it is a state of mind. Your prime is the moment you decide that you have finally had enough of being average. Your prime is the second you stand up, square your shoulders, and declare that the remainder of your life will be the most powerful, most intentional, and most glorious chapter you have ever written. There is a magnificent strength in a person who has seen the seasons turn and knows that winter is always followed by spring. You have the perspective that a younger person can only dream of. You have the ability to see the pitfalls before you step into them, and you have the gravity to lead others who are lost in the woods. This is your call to strength. It is time to stop playing small to make others feel comfortable. It is time to stop apologizing for your ambition or your desire to build something that will outlast your own name. I want you to take all the pain of your shaker days, all the lessons from the Idaho farm, and all the wisdom you've gathered from the mentors like Mr. Shoaff, and I want you to pack them into a singular, focused intensity for the next 10 years. Imagine what you could accomplish if you finally gave 100% of yourself to your grand design. Imagine the look in the eyes of your grandchildren when they see you not as an old man or woman who gave up, but as a giant who never stopped climbing. The marketplace is not looking for more people who are just trying to survive. It is looking for the rare few who are willing to lead with character and vision. You have the raw materials right now to become a legend in your own family, in your industry, and in your community. But you must be willing to pay the price. You must be willing to trade the comfort of the couch for the discipline of the desk. You must be willing to trade the distractions of the crowd for the solitude of the study. You must be willing to become the person you were always meant to be before life told you that you couldn't. This is not just about money. And it's not just about status, it's about the dignity of the human spirit. It's about the satisfaction of knowing that when you finally reach the end of your journey, you will have left nothing on the table. You will have used every talent, every resource, and every ounce of energy to create a life that stands as a monument to what is possible. I am calling on you to rise, not tomorrow, not next Monday, but right now. This very moment is the hinge upon which your entire future swings. You can choose to walk back into the gray fog of the majority, or you can choose to step into the sunlight of your own potential. The strength you need is already within you. It is waiting for your command. It is waiting for you to stop making excuses and start making progress. You have the wisdom of 5 decades. You have the breath in your lungs. You have the power to choose. I have shared these truths with you not just to inspire you for a few minutes, but to provoke you into a new way of living. I want you to be so focused and so disciplined that people who knew you last year won't even recognize you next year. That is the power of a change philosophy. That is the power of a man or woman who has finally decided to design their life. As we conclude this talk, I'm going to fulfill my promise to you. I'm going to step away and leave you in the silence. This is the third and final time I will remind you. Do not run away from this quiet. The world is waiting to drown out your purpose with its noise the second you turn off this screen. Resist that urge. Sit in the stillness. Let the weight of 55 settle on your heart. Let the questions I've asked you echo in the chambers of your mind. This silence is where the real work happens. This is where the commitment is made. This is where the old version of you dies and the architect of your future is born. Take this time to look at your hands and realize they are still strong enough to build. Look at your mind and realize it is still sharp enough to plan. The next 10 years are a blank canvas and the brush is in your hand. What are you going to paint? I'll leave you now to your own thoughts, to your own conscience, and to the magnificent possibility of the rest of your life. Don't rush. Stay in the silence until you have your answer. Stay until you feel the strength of your own resolve rising up to meet the challenge of the seasons. When you stand up from this silence and walk back into the world, will you be walking as a man who is merely surviving the sunset, or as a man who is finally ready to set the world on fire with the wisdom of his years?